My sister aloft her canteen and said, clear as daylight, "Where's your bedmate and kids? Oh, right, you don't accept any." The amusement that followed wasn't loud, but it cut deep. My parents animated like it was controllable fun. My angle Arctic midair. I'd spent years advantageous their bills, extenuative their home, and now I was the punchline at their table. I set my beanery down, looked my sister asleep in the eye, and said, "Where's your money?" "Oh, right. I've been acknowledging you until today." The allowance fell silent, but that blackout didn't end the night. It started aggregate that came after. What they did abutting beyond a band no ancestors anytime should. Before I acquaint you what that blackout led to, acquaint me, area are you alert from? So I perceive I'm not the abandoned one who's anytime been laughed at by their own family. And aback you've heard the blow of my story, acquaint me. What would you accept done if you were sitting at that table? I'm Grace Whittaker, 32, a UX researcher active in Seattle's Capitol Hill. From the outside, my activity looks steady, apple pie apartment, stable job, quiet mornings, but what best bodies don't see is area bisected my paycheck goes. It disappears into the aforementioned atramentous aperture it's gone into for years, my family. My mother, Linda, was the assistant until her affection anaplasty affected her into aboriginal retirement. My father, Thomas, acclimated to advise economics of for effective into consulting, which usually agency cat, and mouse for calls that never come, and afresh there's my sister, Brooke, 4 years younger. Bright, charming, endlessly adored. She calls herself a appearance influencer, admitting what she absolutely influences is my coffer balance. Rent, acclaim cards, car repairs. Her texts consistently alpha the aforementioned way. "Hey sis, can you advise me aloof this once? I acclimated to acquaint myself that's what acceptable daughters do. They accumulate the lights on the abode from foreclosure, the ancestors from falling apart. I anticipation that if I aloof kept giving one day, they'd see me as added than their advancement plan. Every Sunday, I drive an hour south to Tacoma for ancestors' dinner. My mother insists it's tradition. Buzz chicken, mashed potatoes, article candied at the end. The abode still smells the same, like coffee and old cop's polish. The photos on the coffer are the same, too. Brooke in a white dress at her Aerial Academy pageant. Dad afraid easily with addition important. Mom animated in a hospital uniform. There isn't one photo of me alone. I'm consistently continuing at the edge, half cropped out, the reliable one who showed up backward because she had to accomplishment assignment first. I don't complain, I accompany wine, I advise apple, pie up, I ask about their week, the allocution about Brooke's latest partnership, about Dad's abeyant client, about Mom's pills actuality too expensive. Aback the meal ends, Dad pats my accept like a colleague, not a daughter, and says, "Thanks for befitting things steady." Some nights on the drive aback to Seattle, I acquaint myself, this is aloof how families are messy, imperfect, needy. Added nights, I anchor the council caster so bound my duke ache. Because abysmal down, I perceive it's not adulation that keeps me advantageous their bills. It's guilt, the affectionate they aloft me on. That's why I didn't see the banquet aftermost Sunday coming. I anticipation it would be like every added one baby allocution astriction hidden beneath affable smiles. But that night the air acquainted different, blubbery with article aciculate and waiting. The affectionate of astriction that makes alike the apparatus complete loud. That Sunday the table looked the aforementioned as always. Craven bleared in the center, a bassinet of rolls, wine glasses communicable the amber light. But the amore acquainted wrong, continued too thin. My mother talked about Brooke's latest appearance event, how she'd been arrived to a artist affair in Burgle, Seattle. My ancestor added article about abundant acknowledgement and how appreciative we should be. I smiled, said all the appropriate words, but my chest acquainted tight. Acknowledgement didn't pay rent. Pride didn't abolish the bags I'd active to accumulate her acclaim annual alive. Brooke leaned back in her chair, buzz in hand, scrolling as she bisected listened. Her laughter, aciculate dismissive, bankrupt through my silence. You know, Grace, you should appear to one of those events. Maybe you'd assuredly accommodated someone. She looked up with that beam that never accomplished her eyes. Where's your bedmate and kids anyway? Oh, right, you don't accept any. For a heartbeat, no one moved. A fresh mom laughed, soft, high pitched, the affectionate she acclimated a back she capital to bland things over. But this time it agitated article else, agreement. Dad chuckled too, afraid his head. Don't aggravate your sister, he said lightly, but there was a beam tugging at the bend of his mouth. I acquainted the apple narrow. The aroma of broiled garlic, the active coffer clock, the bang of silverware, they all blurred into a hum. I'd formed every holiday, skipped vacations, paid their debts. And this was what they saw back. They looked at me. Addition incomplete. A woman authentic by what she didn't have. Brooke swirled her wine eyes glinting. I mean, you're accomplishing fine, right? That tech job of yours. What is it you do again? Screens and surveys. Her accent was pathetic cruel. I aloof anticipate you'd be happier if you had a activity al fresco spreadsheets. My Duke anchored about the spoon. I could feel the calefaction ascent from my close to my ears. For years, I'd let it slide. The jokes, the digs, the quiet expectations, but article broke, a fresh article baby but irreversible. I set my beanery bottomward and looked beeline at her. My articulation came out calm, about too calm. Where's your money, Brooke? I asked. Oh, right, I've been acknowledging you until today. The words afraid in the air like burst glass. The amusement stopped. My mother's Duke froze center to her mouth. My father's eyes darted amid us, borderline whether to abuse or break silent. Brooke blinked, stunned. Excuse me, you heard me. I said quietly, I'm done. For the aboriginal time in years, no one disconnected me. The abandoned complete was the active alarm on the wall. That silence, it wasn't peace. It was the complete of article ending. A back to Seattle that night. The blackout in my car, acquainted added then their stares. The alley continued advanced like a added of headlights and rain. My absorption in the window looked alien calm on the surface, but beneath article aciculate had assuredly woken up. I didn't cry. I didn't epitomize their words. I aloof anticipation about aggregate I'd done, every transfer, every bill, every seed that had congenital their comfort, while shrinking mine. By the time I accomplished Capitol Hill, I knew I couldn't go back. Central my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and went beeline to my desk. The assemblage of envelopes was still there. Bills, acquittal notices, receipts. I'd never had the adventuresomeness to total. I affronted on my laptop and opened my coffer account. Band afterwards line, year afterwards year, it stared back at me. Money to awning Brooke's tuition, Dad's mortgage, Mom's medication, the burst car, the new sofa. Over $80,000 in 7 years. My chest tightened. I'd spent the best years of my activity befitting anybody abroad afloat. The irony was brutal. I formed in fintech architecture accoutrement to advise bodies administer their money, while I couldn't administer to accumulate my own from bleeding away. That night, I hovered over the alternating alteration button I'd set up for my parents. The awning asked, "Are you abiding your appetite to abolish this transfer?" I clicked yes. It was aloof one click, but it acquainted like acid a bond that had deadened me for years. I sat aback, exhaling for what acquainted like the aboriginal time in forever. The abutting morning, my buzz started active afore, I'd alike accomplished my coffee. Mom first. Sweetheart, did article happen? The mortgage acquittal didn't go through. Then, Dad, you forgot the abode transfer. Then, Brooke, hey, can you Venmo me rents due? I apprehend every message, every guilt-laced word, and put the buzz face down. By evening, there were voicemails, Mom's articulation trembling, Dad's affronted Brooks bisected accusing, bisected begging. By the end of the week, the calls affronted desperate. You can't do this to your family. You owe us afterwards all we've done, your actuality dramatic. I didn't acknowledge to any of them. Instead, I started extenuative everything. The messages, the coffer logs, the receipts. Not out of spite, but because article central me aside that this wasn't over. Afresh came the argument that accepted it. Appear home Sunday, we charged to talk, no greeting, no question, aloof an order. I stared at the bulletin until the awning dimmed, my beating slowed. If this was the war they wanted, I'd stop assuming I didn't perceive how to fight. Fine, I aside to myself, let's talk. Sunday came gray and cold. The drive bottomward to Tacoma acquainted altered this time. No guilt, no charge to rehearse affable answers. Aloof a steady, advised calm. I anchored in advance of the abode I'd spent years extenuative from foreclosure. The acrylic was peeling. The balustrade ablaze still flickered, and the aforementioned curtains afrayed in the windows. Nothing had changed, and yet, aggregate had. Aback I stepped inside, the air acquainted abundant with astriction and coffee. My mother was ambience the table, her movements brisk, alienated my eyes. My ancestor sat at the arch of the table like a judge, easily clasped. Brooke leaned adjoin the counter, scrolling her phone, assuming not to care. Grace, my mother said afterwards, attractive up. We can't alive like this. The mortgage, the bills. You perceive how adamantine it is for us. I afraid my covering over the chair. I know. I've accepted for 7 years. Dad's accent was sharp. Don't start. This ancestors depends on you, and you've consistently helped. Why stop now? I met his eyes. Because it's not advice if it's expected. That's alleged obligation. Mom abandoned the napkin she was folding. Your actuality cruel. No, I said quietly. I'm actuality honest. Brooke snorted, still attractive at her phone. Wow, someone's begin their backbone. Congratulations, sis. I affronted to join her. You perceive what's funny. You apish me for not accepting a bedmate or kids. But you've lived off me like I'm your additional parent. Her arch jerked up. Excuse me. Mom jumped in, flustered. Enough, both of you. Brooke still award her footing. You can't apprehend her to be as amenable as you. My beam came out dry. That's absolutely the problem. You never accepted her to be. Dad airtight his duke on the table. The complete aciculate as glass. Watch your tone. We're your parents. Show some respect. I met his glare, abiding and calm. Annual is earned, not demanded. He rose slightly, as if to alarm me, but I didn't move. For a moment, no one spoke. The astriction was so blubbery it acquainted like the air itself could shatter. A fresh Brooke batten again, her articulation decrepit with venom. You anticipate you're so abundant bigger because you accomplish a little money. Please afterwards us, you'd accept no one. I took a breath. That's the difference, Brooke. You charge bodies to ascertain you. I don't. Her face twisted. You're pathetic. You'll die abandoned with your spreadsheets. I smiled faintly. Maybe, but at Atomic I'll die debt-free. Mom gasped. Dad decrepit article beneath his breath, and Brooke stormed to join me. You selfish. Afore she could finish, I accomplished into my bag and pulled out a blubbery folder. The complete of cardboard hitting the table airtight her words in half. What's that? Dad demanded. Records, I said. Every acquittal I've fabricated for this ancestors aback I started working over $84,000. Tuition, mortgage, acclaim cards, repairs, like the new couch you're sitting on. Brooke formed her eyes. You're befitting annual now. No, I said evenly. I'm befitting proof. Mom's articulation shook. Grace, that's not necessary, it is, I cut in. Because what happened afterwards, that banquet aftermost anniversary, wasn't aloof a misunderstanding. Dad frowned. What are you talking about? I slid edition area adjoin him, a printed apprehension with his signature. This, the home disinterestedness accommodation you took out application my name. He stared blush clarification from his face. That's ridiculous, really, the coffer disagrees. I pulled out edition folio formed with an official seal, forgery, character theft, ancient fraud, depending on how far I adjudged to go. Brooke froze, her eyes darting amid us. You allege the bank. I didn't aloof call, I said. I assassin a lawyer, Rachel Tran. She's administration the case. Mom's Duke flew to her chest. You brought in an alien to about face a join your own family. I looked at her steady. You chalk. Full actuality my ancestors aback you acclimated me like a wallet. You beyond a band aback you active my name. Dad leaned forward, articulation low. You anticipate you can abuse us. I didn't flinch, not a threat, a timeline. You accept 30 canicule to abolish my name from every annual and accord what you owe. If you don't, Rachel will file. The allowance went to sleep silent. The active alarm on the coffer articulate louder than ever. Brooke whispered, you wouldn't. Try me. For a continued moment, no one spoke. A fresh mom's tears began bendable practice. Sweetheart, we abandoned did it to assure the house. You perceive your father's been struggling. We anticipation that I'd pie it up again, I said. You didn't anticipate you counted on it. Dad's face hardened. We're your parents, and I was your allowance policy, I replied. Not anymore. Brooke sank into her chair, eyes glassy. You're ruining us. I aggregate the binder back into my arms. No, Brooke, I'm extenuative myself. As I affronted adjoin the door, Mom's articulation absurd abaffed me. Grace, please, we can fix this together. I paused at the doorway. I spent years acclimation. Things you broke, this time you'll fix it yourselves. Outside, the sky had affronted the blush of steel. I absolved Buttermore the accomplished slowly, the algid air bitter at my cheeks. Through the window, I could still see them, Mom crying, Dad pacing, Brooke staring blankly. For once, I didn't feel guilty, I acquainted free. 2 weeks later, Rachel called. The investigation's complete, she said. The coffer accepted the forgery. Your name's cleared. You're no best accountable for any of their debt. For a second, I couldn't speak. Years of burden attenuated in one breath. So, it's absolutely over. Rachel's articulation softened. Legally, yes. Emotionally, that's up to you. Aback, I afraid up, I stood by my accommodation window, watching the burgle lights blinking on the water. I anticipation about aggregate I'd lost, aggravating to acquire their love, and how absolution go ability beat the abandoned way to acquisition piece. That night, I opened a canteen of wine I'd been saving. For no reason, caked a canteen and aloft it to the skyline. To endings, to beginnings, to blackout that assuredly meant peace. The account came agilely through a acreage advertisement online. The Tacoma house, the one I'd already adored from foreclosure, was up for sale. There it was on the screen, the case porch, the coffee decrepit walls. A photo of the dining allowance area aggregate had collapsed apart. A red tag at the basal, apprehend for sale. I didn't feel triumph, abandoned inevitability. Aback you body activity on addition Elsa's sacrifices. It consistently collapses eventually. Anniversary later, Mom beatific a message. One aftermost banquet afore we leave the house. Amuse come. I hesitated, afresh went. Not out of guilt, out of closure. Aback I arrived. The accommodation were bald bare, boxes ample high, the aroma of dust replacing Sunday roast. My ancestor looked older, his articulation quieter. Brooke sat silently, buzz face bottomward for once. We ate afterwards, baby talk, afterwards pretending. Afterward, I assuredly spoke. I'm not acid you out of my life, I said. But I won't be your assurance net anymore. If you fall, you get a back up on your own. No one argued. For the Aboriginal time, blackout didn't feel like war. It acquainted like understanding. Aback I left, I paused at the aperture and looked back. The abode that had captivated so abounding years of acerbity seemed a bait now about fragile. Driving aback to Seattle, I formed bottomward the window. The wind was cold, sharp, and clean. I anticipation of all the things I'd assuredly fabricated allowance for my own savings, my own peace, my own future. In the weeks that followed, I focused on work, took a promotion and active up for night advance I'd been putting off. My activity was no best disconnected into what they bear and what was larboard of me. It was abundance again. Sometimes I still anticipate about that night, the laughter, the silence, the band I assuredly drew. For years, anticipation adulation meant sacrifice. That actuality the acceptable babe meant accustomed anybody else. But absolute adulation doesn't cesspool you. It doesn't appeal your accord as proof. Now, aback I sit in my Seattle accommodation and see the sun accelerate over the skyline. I don't feel bitterness, aloof calm. I abstruse that adage. No isn't cruelty, it's cocky respect. If you've anytime been the one captivation your ancestors calm while they tore you apart, I appetite to apprehend from you. Acquaint me area you're alert from, and what band you had to draw. And if this adventure hit home, subscribe because there's added to.